This is Hannah from Hall Beer Shop, and you're listening to Daftaboutcraft.
Daftaboutcraft is sponsored by Hall Beer Shop, based in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. You can find a huge selection of craft beers in-store and online. Check them out at hall-beer.com.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Now, we love to give you loads and loads of content each and every episode, and we have done that in spades this time. So I'm Dave D, and you are...
Dave B.
And we will be bringing you all sorts of things from the craft beer world over the next 60 minutes or so. We've got not one, but two interviews with great brewers this time. Who have we got, Dave?
Gareth from Epochal, and regular listeners will remember me getting very excited about Epochal on a previous episode when I tried them for the first time, and we got to learn a heck of a lot about barrels and barrel aging fermentation, and I could have easily just done a whole episode on that, but Dave told me we had to talk about other things as well. So we also got Dominic from Carnival on, and again, regular listeners will know we've talked about Carnival before, and they were very favourably received on episode 21 with their Schwarzbier in the drink along section.
What else have we got? We've got Highboard Tripe, two people we're interviewing, and we've got two beers in Highboard Tripe, and we've both got the same beers, and we'll be drinking them, and they're two new beers from Vocation in Hebden Bridge. We've also got Tried and Tested, where we reveal our favourite beer from the last few weeks. And we've also got Brew to Me, which is traditionally the feature we kick off the podcast with. So let's go straight into that. So here we are. The first segment on Daftaboutcraft every time is Brew to Me, where we try a beer from a brewery we haven't tried before. It may be a new brewery, maybe an established one. We just never know what we're going to get our hands on. Dave usually goes first, so over to you. And what have you got this time?
So, much like yourself, whenever you or I go somewhere, we're always on the hunt, aren't we? Like, have I had them? Who are they? And if I haven't had it, I'll usually pick something up. And that's exactly what happened when I had a recent weekend away in Norfolk, which you wouldn't probably associate too heavily with craft. It's very sort of traditional ale country out there, but there is pockets of it here and there. And I found a bottle shop in Sheringham. Everything was very local, and tucked in amongst it was a range of bottles from Malt Coast. And I've done a little bit of digging, i.e. the internet, and they are based in Brant Hill, which is near Wells next to sea. And from what I can see, the name Malt Coast is because they grow and crush their own malt.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm just thinking about Sheringham, because I went there not long ago and I didn't see this bottle shop. That's knocked me a little bit. How did I miss that?
It's in the little arcade as you're just walking down to the front.
Oh, I know.
I happened to see the sign as I was walking down, and so of course I was right up a drain pipe. Yeah. Everyone else is sort of making their way down to the seaside. I'm like, I'll go find out. Exactly. So they're very new. They have 3 core beers, a pale, an amber, and an IPA. And a summer special, a farm table saison, and that's the beer I've gone for. I do have the others, but I thought, well, why not? I'll try the summer special, which was bottled in July. Says it's best before May next year, so nice long shelf life. And this is a classic saison, dry, crisp, light, spicy hop finish, and it's very light as a table beer, 3.6%.
Excellent.
Very, very golden amber in the glass.
Amber, yeah.
And very lively as well. We've got that sort of bubblegum nose that you and I have talked about.
If you've never listened to the podcast before, this sort of bubblegum nose thing, when people used to talk about this, and we used to, what do you mean? What do you mean? But all of a sudden, we had a few beers and it clicked, and now we're finding that we get this bubblegum aroma more and more. What's that like then, Dave?
I would say it is a table saison. So they've hit the brief. It's quite sweet. I don't know how much of that spicy hop finish I get. There's a little tiny bit, but it's actually that sort of bubble gum, and there's sort of a bit strawberry maybe.
You don't get many table saisons, do you?
I say they've hit the brief, and now you've said it like that, I wonder if it is quite a table saison. It's certainly a table beer. It's very easy to drink.
Not too funky.
It's really not funky. So it's definitely not on that sort of Belgian-y saison side of things. If you did the drink along where you got that duration one.
That's what I'm thinking about, yeah, because that was really soft. And nothing like that?
Quite different to that, really. You don't get any sort of flavour, and admittedly, they're not saying it has got one standout flavour, but it's not. It's not got any funkiness to it. It is quite full. I quite like it. I'm interested to see what the other bits and bobs they've got are like. But if you went to sort of say where they're based or other places around the country, you went to a nice restaurant and you wanted something light to start with your meal, or something where you're having something a bit heavy and you want to lift it up, it's that kind of beer, I think. A nice restaurant beer. I don't know if that's quite a category, but that's what I'm sort of thinking. It's not one you need to seek out if you're in a craft bar or something like that. But I think it has a place in that it's definitely better than if you went somewhere and they were just, we've got tins of, or we've got a macro lager on draft or something. It goes in those sorts of surroundings.
When we went to Sheringham, we sat on the seafront there, and there was a beautiful blue sky. I could just imagine opening that beer into my glass, which I'd obviously carry around with me at all times, just in case, and having a bit of that, watching the sea in front of a blue sky. You might struggle to find the blue sky so much at this time of year, but yeah, it sounds good. Certainly haven't put me off wanting to have a go at that.
No, I think that setting is exactly right. Or you've gone away, stayed in your holiday home, or you're caravanning or something, and you've got that view, and you're sitting at the sort of 5 o'clock after you've been doing something during the day, and you have your first beer before you're sort of having a few at the cottage. Yeah, that'll do the job.
That's quite a glowing review. Shall I have a go at mine?
Yeah, go on. What have we got this time?
We usually don't compare notes on what we're going to drink, and we haven't done this time. Dave, some months ago, we were chatting on Instagram to a guy called Donica Burke, who was just starting out on his own, a brewery called Crop Brewery.
Yes.
He had been head brewer at Tappet Brewery, and also before that at Dig Brew. Well, he started during the third lockdown his own brewery called Crop. He's just released his second beer. I haven't got the second one. I've got the first one right in front of me. I thought we'd start at the beginning of the Crop story. So really fascinated to see what this like, because obviously this guy's got a bit of a heritage. So what we've got here is a foggy IPA called Loud Noises, and it's 6.8%.
You're starting light then.
I hadn't even looked at the ABV, to be honest.
So I'm guessing if he's saying it's a foggy IPA, it's going to be hazy, but is he using like the foggy strain is my guess.
Let's see if we've got any clues on the can. Okay, so we've got Galaxy, Motueka, and Citra.
I think if we were putting a combination together for you, that would not be high on the list. So this will be interesting.
No, I'm
just personal preference, but
yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the Galaxy has been dealt with here, whether it overshadows everything else. Let's have a look. Nice few bubbles there, just fizzing away on the top. Let's see. Well, okay, yeah, Galaxy is the overriding force there. That can't be denied. But it's not bitter. It's not really bitter. That's quite pleasant, actually. We talk about whether beers taste like they are as strong as they actually are. We said this was 6.8. Doesn't taste like 6.8. I'll probably pitch it at maybe about 5, maybe a tiny bit more. That's very nice, actually. It's good. It's a bitter, hazy IPA.
Okay, and I mean, the Galaxy, obviously, we've talked about Galaxy before. It can go very bitter. It can also go a bit sort of dank and slightly oniony and things like that. Is it doing any of that? Or are you getting...
No, it's not. It's not straying much off a straight line, to be honest. You know, we say all the time, there's so many pales and IPAs and juice bombs and foggy IPAs out there, and they do become quite difficult to tell apart, don't they? This fits into that solid middle category of decent IPAs, I think.
Yeah, so it sounds like a solid base to work off, and we'll see what more Crop can offer. So, delighted to say, off the back of finding Epochal on honeymoon in Scotland in a bottle shop in Stirling, the power of the internet and social media means that 2 months later, we are joined by Gareth from Epochal. So, welcome, Gareth.
Thanks very much.
You are excited, Dave, aren't you? You're really buzzed up for this one.
Yeah, just really interested to learn as much as possible because there's not an awful lot out there about yourselves yet, is there?
Yeah, I don't have a website yet, which I probably should have. That's the obvious place to keep information, like, who I am and what I do. So that'll be up pretty soon, actually. There'll be a website in the next week or two.
Tell us more, sort of how has this all started? And then we can sort of talk about the USP, obviously, about the barrel fermentation. But what's your background and sort of how long has this been going?
It's something that's been in the works for a long time. My background in work is actually in academia, so I used to be a philosophy lecturer at the University of Glasgow. But for probably my whole adult life, I've been very interested in beer. Sort of caught it accidentally very young before craft beer was really a big thing, and quite quickly got bitten by the homebrew bug. So I became a bit of an obsessive homebrewer. That was for a great many years. Slowly my interest kind of crept into funk, into Brettanomyces and other unusual yeasts and things. It got serious enough. I won a fair-sized competition in 2015, the UK National Homebrewing Awards. I was a runner-up the year before that. So that was part of what gave me the impetus to make the jump, to start my own thing. So the idea, over a number of years, the idea for Epochal kind of crystallized a bit. I was getting interested in ideas about sense of place and making beers that connect to places. And my kind of feeling was that there were things I wanted to explore to do with traditions and people and things in Scotland. That was an interesting way to me to approach the idea of sense of place in beer, to do it through ideas rather than just exclusively focusing on local ingredients. I mean, for example, Pale Ale has a big tradition in Scotland. It was a big export of Scotland's in the 1800s, but ingredients-wise, it was always a very international style. They were using hops from Germany, hops from the US. And so kind of looking at some of these ideas of place through that lens of history was sort of an interesting idea to me. And that's kind of partly what Epochal's about.
So are you looking to make this a full-time business for you, or is this just on the side, or how do you see it going in the future?
No, it is a full-time business now. So when I wanted to get into this, I left academia and worked in a couple of local breweries just to get the kind of stuff you need to know about doing this stuff at scale, professionally.
Yeah.
You need to know how to clean tanks and all that kind of boring stuff. But so I worked at Out of Town Brewery, which is a really small one you might not have heard of. That was based in Cumbernauld. And Drygate Brewery, which you probably have heard of, next door to Tennant. So I worked in there for a good couple of years before lockdown, and then left to kind of set this up. And from the beginning, this has been my full-time job. So it's the kind of thing where it is so kind of involved, and it's just me, that there's just too much to do part-time. I mean, there's there's too much to do full-time. But
well, let's open a beer then, shall we, and see what we think.
Yeah, just while we do that, one thing, when you say you're doing this on your own, now, when we talk to people and they're setting up on their own, you get an X litre kit and then you go from there and then you grow a bit and then you might do some cuckoo brewing and stuff. How much trickier is it to set up what you've been doing with the sort of barrel fermenting, as that's the thing that you've set out to do as a startup, as a brewery? Does it come with its own set of challenges?
Yeah, they do immensely. So in part, these kind of beers take a long time. And so that there's a big gap between starting all the work and actually having beer ready to sell. So you need to kind of work that into your budget. But also I'm using quite a lot of slightly peculiar processes that are sort of my own mishmash of modern ideas and old ideas from kind of British brewing mostly. Bits of Belgian stuff in there, but mostly British. And kind of putting all that together in one place was a bit of a challenge, but because every piece of kit's different and every space is different, so assembling all that stuff and making beer only that way was just a very steep learning curve. A lot of things to be worked out pretty quick to get everything sort of up and running. So yeah, it was tricky.
So we've just opened Green Label, and as an example, when was this first put in the barrel?
That's probably been a couple of months in bottle, and then a couple of months or 3 months maybe before that in wood. So it's a kind of 4 month beer before it's released, and it was released nearly a month ago. So
I got to say, it smells amazing in the glass, doesn't it?
it's that thing that happens when you combine Brett with hops, is that they interact and produce these really crazy, vibrant, floral and fruity aromatics. So it's a really striking thing about combining a lot of hops with a lot of Brett. So I think that character is one of the definitive things about old pale ales, is that really complex floral, fruity hop Brett interaction. I like that character a lot.
It does taste quite old world, and I hope that comes across as a compliment, because that's how I mean it. It's not, as you're saying, it's not that hop forward, loads of fruit, so thick you can't see through it type job. I mean, it is fairly opaque, but you couldn't put this next to any of the sort of big boys would normally discuss, and that's your pale and their pale. They're two completely different animals, aren't they?
It takes a little bit of explaining, because if you call something like this a pale ale, it's very different from what people often think of as pale ales in the year 2021. But I think that the key elements of that beer are things that would have been common to pale ales a good while ago. So to me, it still is a pale ale. I hear people call it a saison sometimes, because they think that there's a lot in common with the flavours of a saison.
I get a bit of that as well. You say sort of pale ale, you might think, they're a steady rolling man. This is so far removed from that, I can't tell you. 6.2%, very sort of floral at the front, and so different to most of those sort of craft pale ales that are out there now.
I love the Goldings in that beer. I think that when you say this kind of tastes old world, it might be that you're picking up. It's mostly Goldings in the boil. So the bitterness and things is mostly coming from Goldings. And I find that Goldings has this really, really nice, peppery, quite complex bitterness. It's really nice on the palate. So the Centennial is more of a dry hop thing, and the sort of palate is more defined by the Goldings, which I think kind of gives it that nice kind of elegant balance on the palate with lots of really bright aromatics that partly comes from the Centennial.
And again, without banging the drum too hard, Goldings would be, very original. Now they'd be not sneered upon, but they're just not used, are they? It's, if it's not Citrus Simcoe Mosaic in some degree, they are what used now, and it's going to the new world, and we're getting cryo pop and whatnot. But Goldings is one of the original sort of hops that you could get hold of.
Yeah, I think it was the original pale ale hop. Really, that was the defining hop of pale ales in the 1800s. Was Goldings more than any other. But yeah, so that one's from Herefordshire, rather than East Kent Goldings, from a place called Brook House, who I think are doing really special stuff with British varieties like Goldings, Fuggles, and things. And my heart was warmed speaking to Brook House, and they were saying that Fuggles and Challenger were so popular that you couldn't buy them on the spot. You had to contract them in advance because they were just selling all their Fuggles.
Craft beer is eating itself in a way. Then we're going full circle.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's a little bit of the smokiness in there. That was the thing that I loved the most about Ad Infinitum, was that smoky flavour of it, and it never went over the top, but it never went away. And I loved that about that beer. It reminded me slightly of a Rausch, but not a Rausch, but still, I want more of that whenever that's next going to be in a barrel. But that was brilliant. Yeah,
that was a little bit of residual whiskey character, I think, was partly responsible for that. Also, Brett can produce a compound that smells a little bit smoky, so I think it was an interaction sort of between those two things, maybe. Most of the barrels I'm using are ex-whiskey stock, and it takes a certain amount of time for all that character to completely leave the barrels, which I'm kind of okay with. I don't mind a little bit of just a little reminder of where the barrels came from. It's quite nice, I think.
I've got to ask you this question because it's something that I have a lot of conversations about with my wife. She always says, when people are using whiskey barrels with beer, how many times are those barrels being used before you get hold of them?
Probably 4. So there's the original pre-whiskey use. So probably sherry, bourbon, and then the whiskey producers will probably use it 3 times.
Right, okay.
But you never really know how long, especially the big ones. A lot of the barrels I'm using are puncheons, which are 500 litres, and those are good for long-term aging because they don't let as much oxygen in. So, in principle, those can be decades and decades old before I get them.
Have you only got a finite amount of brews you can put in those barrels now, and have you got to keep sourcing more?
There'll be a wee bit of wear and tear over time, but depending on what you want from them, you can use them a lot. In principle, you can use them, almost indefinitely if you're using them as fermenters, because the microbes will set up. They'll be quite happy in there. They'll go a centimetre deep, which is pretty bar for a microscopic organism, and they'll just sort of live in there. And every time you put beer in, you're kind of selecting for the microbes that are happiest, feeding the microbes that like eating your beer, and so every time you're kind of training them to behave a certain way and to be happy, making your beer. So you can sort of find that reusing the barrels a lot gives you better results.
We've always sort of presumed that the more you use them, they degrade and you get less benefit from them, but that's not necessarily the case then.
If you're trying to soak the flavors of the barrel out, you're trying to get bourbon flavor or whiskey, whatever, then sure, that will degrade over a few uses. But if you're looking to use them as fermenters because they're so good, because these microbes like living in them basically, and because they're so effective, it's like lambic or something, where aging those beers in oak, not necessarily looking for big barrel impact, but using them because oak is the right fermenting vessel for a lambic. So it's taking more of that sort of approach to using oak. And in that case, then, you can use them quite a lot.
This is really fascinating. Are there sort of other types of barrels that you'll be after in the future?
I buy my barrels mostly from Speyside Cooperage, which is, you should look that up. It's an amazing place. They've got these big pyramids that look like, the Great Pyramids, but they're made of barrels, just big stacks of barrels.
And I was going to say, how much does it cost to get hold of these barrels?
It varies hugely. A well-used small whiskey cask could be 50 quid, but a wine cask that's just been emptied could be 250 quid. It could be more than that if it's a bigger barrel. So it varies a fair bit.
Still less than I thought it would be, actually. I thought you were going to say sort of four figures to start with.
Yeah.
So.
All right. I mean, some will be. So I've actually been speaking to a vat builder in Dufftown who usually make vats for whiskey production about maybe getting a porter vat built, a kind of custom, a big tall vertical porter aging vessel based on sort of designs people used to use to make porter. So that would be more expensive if you're getting a big custom thing like that. But if you're getting something that's already been used for wine or for something else, then it's not as valuable. So they tend to be not too bad.
You have answered so many questions that I've been thinking about for so long in such a short amount of time.
Just back to your beers as well. Obviously, we've got two, but where now are you in the life of the brewery in terms of how many beers have you sort of put out and what are you sort of hoping to do?
I've released 7 so far. The Porter's the most recent. I don't have any real plans for a core range. There are beers, I think, that I'm really keen to rebrew. And I'll get to that. Probably next year I'll start rebrewing some things. Ad infinitum will be one. It'll be a sort of fairly steadily changing mixture of different things. There's loads of different styles I want to explore as well, but different bits of Scottish brewing to do my own versions of and things. A lot of the beers I've got in wood are higher gravity, actually, because so at the moment, the brewery's only been trading for a few months, so the beers that I'm releasing are just the ones that were ready first. So they're tending to be lower ABV, lower gravity kind of styles. But so I really like Bretty Imperial Stouts. I think that's a style that kind of wears Brett really well. So I'm hoping to do lots of those. Some big Scotch ales. So yeah, well, in the 19th century, Scotch ales were really pale, which people don't usually expect. Often they were quite heavily hopped, and some of them were just astonishingly strong. Some of the recipes, I think, were probably at the time the strongest beers in the world, and I think we've probably only recently surpassed those strengths. So that there's a lot of fun stuff there to kind of get your teeth stuck into.
It seems you're really keen to sort of build on the Scottish heritage of beer as well.
I mean, I guess I don't see myself as a historical brewery particularly, but rather I kind of like to make things that have a sort of past to them. I mean, I guess I think about like sort of modern lambic producers who I think do quite modern things, but they're making lambic that's been around for, a very long time.
Now, I can see Dave started the porter, but while he's sort of going to just taste that, is that part of a barrel behind you? This obviously doesn't work very well for a podcast, but your background, is that a...
All right, no, I'm in my, this is my girlfriend's little office space. That's
I just thought it was fantastic if there was a bit of a barrel.
It does look quite barrel-like, yeah.
It does a bit, yeah. Yeah, I could be inside a vat. Maybe we should edit that out.
That'd be excellent.
Tell people I'm sitting inside a vat.
I'm a little bit behind, Dave, so what's the porter like then?
That smokiness that we talked about earlier, that's there again, isn't it? Quite subtle.
Yeah.
Were these two barrels, obviously they're different barrels, have they come from entirely different places? Like what?
A lot of the barrels get they paint over the heads so you can't tell where they came from.
Right.
The distilleries can be very, very protective of that kind of information. I mean, some of them aren't, so it just varies a little bit.
Right.
But the big difference with the barrels, as I use them, tends to be just the microbes that live in them. So over time, the barrels diverge quite a bit. And so you'll get some that are more out and out funky, some that are more floral, some that are more kind of dark fruit, and it depends on what strains sort of settle.
So essentially, each barrel with its microbes becomes its own microculture.
A little microclimate in every barrel, yeah.
And obviously, every little microclimate, by nature of it, is different. So therefore, you get the different characteristics.
It means that if you brew one batch of beer and split it between 4 barrels, then you've essentially got 4 kind of quite different versions of that one beer.
Right.
You can combine together or combine with other beers, and there's a huge scope there for creating different things just by blending. It's a really powerful tool.
This is right up your
Anything
street. This is all up your street, Dave, isn't it? You're living there.
No, I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, it is.
But I've got to say, this porter is excellent. I'm really
it's really good, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really pleased with it. I think it's going to age really well as well. Like I think.
Oh yes, we have spares. Can keep one back. And...
Oh yeah, that's
true.
Yeah,
I thought it'd be good for you to kind of tuck.
Yeah, great thinking.
Yeah, it's so good with food as well. Actually, with that porter, it's this is one of the classic porter pairings is with like sweet shellfish, so porter and oysters and all that sort of thing. But when that pairing first arose, it was in London when porter was cheap and you could scrape oysters off the banks of the Thames. So it's a food pairing that goes back to when porter was a bit more like that, was a bit kind of a bit dry, a bit funky, that kind of character. So it's really nice to sort of go back to that food pairing with a porter that is a bit like that, and it's really nice with like oysters, and we have lots of sweet shellfish around here, so scallops and longestine and all that kind of thing. It's really, really nice. It's great with like game and things as well, and it's good with lots of food.
Where do you hope to take Epochal as time passes?
In the short term, I'd like a web shop. In the slightly longer term, I'd like a tap room. It's a nice little spot the brewery's on. It's right on the canal.
Oh, nice!
Just to the north of the centre of the city. So I'd like to be able to bring people to the brewery and show them what I'm up to. Beyond that, my goal is just to explore a lot of these ideas to make the best beer I can, and to sort of develop the brewery in a way that allows me not to compromise on what I do. I've started from the beginning only making this barrel aged stuff, not making other things. In some ways, it might have been easier to make other things that would pay the bills more easily.
Yeah, maybe more sort of more mainstream things. But I think that you've got your USP with the barrels, haven't you? That's the thing that's going to sell your beers.
So I'd like to just be able to keep the focus and keep making what I want to do in a sort of fairly uncompromising sort of a way. And as long as I can do that, then I'll be happy. So if people want to get hold of your beers now, where can they get them from? Craft beer shops, basically, and craft beer bars. I was very lucky. I felt from the beginning to get a lot of support from all over the UK. So since the summer, when things kicked off, the beer's been popping up right up and down the UK, and it actually is starting to pop up a little bit in Europe now. So that the availability is not bad. If you Google, you'll find plenty of places that stock it online, and any craft beer shops that anyone would like to stock it, they can always just give them a nudge or ask me to give them a nudge.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
So it's time on the podcast now for the segment that we call Tried and Tested, which is where we look at all the beers we've had since our last episode, so 3 weeks ago, and tell you which one we've enjoyed the most. And Dave B is going to start the ball rolling this time. What have you enjoyed the most, Dave?
Well, it's very fitting you should say I was starting the ball rolling, because the beer I enjoyed the most in the last 3 weeks is called Ball Pit.
Look at that. How well put together
and
is this?
You didn't even know. And it is from Phantom Brewing Company in Reading. Phantom popped up on the last episode when we were mentioning the Sticky Toffee Stout we had from Hull on tap, which was brilliant. And this is a 5.5% New England IPA, and it stood out just because it was quite veggie on the nose, and it was a little bit veggie to taste, but it was also really fruity, really full, and I can still remember it. And that vegginess, and I mean it as a compliment, it could easily have come from Verdant, and I wouldn't have batted an eyelid. Still saying a beer tastes like a Verdant is high praise, and so I hope Phantom take it in the Spirit is intended if they hear this, but it is a really nice beer. And if you like Verdant, you'll love that.
And for me, I am going to Somerset, and for a beer from Yonder. I have a lot of sours. I love sours, as any regular listener will know. And a lot of them, they sort of fall into that category that, yeah, they're nice, but this one really stood out. Those caramelised flavours really came through. Upside down, I had it on tap at Hall Beer, who sponsor the podcast, and it was excellent. So if you can find a can, grab it, and I'm sure you will love it. So we've already spoken to Epochal on episode 22, and now we're speaking to somebody else. We've got Dominic Hope-Smith, the big boss behind Carnival Brewing in Liverpool, with us. And, well, we're delighted to have you on. How you doing?
Nice. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Nice to talk to you both. Really enjoy the podcast, so it's nice to be invited on.
Oh, that's nice. We love positive feedback, don't we, Dave? Makes our day, that does.
Well, it's going to be a good interview straight away, isn't it? but butter up your interviewers and away you go.
Yeah, that's a great start. First thing we should say, while it's fresh in my mind, I love your can art. Has it always been like this, or has it changed? It seems to be so vibrant at the moment.
It's changed a little bit. So when we first started, we didn't really... We were just trying to establish what the brand was like and what we wanted the brand to be. It was always our aim to work with artists to make the cans individual, to make the cans stand out. We weren't really bothered about having a specific theme so much as, having the Carnival Sunshine Sea top middle was about it, really. And everything else was working with the artist to kind of make the most of their artistic style and get them to be as creative as possible on the can art. Initially, we started doing it ourselves, and then we realised that actually we could do much better than that. When you look at the cans on a shelf as are collected together, they may all be very different in style, but I think almost like that
ties them
together. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
absolutely. It's great that there's a lot of local artists involved as well.
Yeah, we've got lots of friends in the community, and we've got Liverpool's a very creative city, very good creative independent art scene. It's got great art school. It's got some really good international renowned galleries, and a lot of creatives come to Liverpool because it's quite a relaxed, independently focused city. So, and
also home to some decent beer as well now.
Yeah. I think the city's really getting there. Yeah, we've got a few good breweries.
So when you started off in 2017, what was the craft scene in Liverpool like at that time? So 4 or 5 years ago. I
think by that time there was Dead Crafty had set up. It's worth a visit if you haven't been there before. There was a very good tap list. Prior to that, there was a bar called the 23 Club, which was below a restaurant on Hope Street. And that's where a lot of the Liverpool Merseyside breweries kind of met. There was a really good scene there. It was very much early days for the city. Liverpool's a very kind of cast forward place. It took us a little while to catch up with like Manchester and the craft scene and elsewhere. But the 23 Club was a real kind of hub for that kind of thing. So I know a lot of brewers and breweries and people who are now in the industry met there. There were homebrew clubs, there were, events, tap takeovers and things like that. And they were very much at the forefront of that. And then kind of since then, it's been kind of playing catch up. So, since we opened the bar in 2019, December, a few more places have opened subsequently. So it's becoming a bit more of a destination.
Having gone with work to Liverpool for a few times, it never felt like there was that much there, but that's definitely changed in the last few years. But what was the sort of inspiration for Carnival then to enter the market at 2017? What was the background and why you wanted to strike out?
Well, I met Aid, my business partner now, at a charity carnival in South Liverpool. That's when the name came from. Mm-hmm. I was wearing a Flaming Lips t-shirt. He's very Aid's obsessed with music. We had a mutual friend introduce us. I was wearing a t-shirt. He was like, "Oh, he's wearing a Flaming Lips t-shirt. It must be okay." And then we got talking. I was obsessed with making beer in my kitchen at that point. I was a home brewer to the annoyance of my wife, taking up the kitchen every Sunday. And then one of the mutual friend basically said, "Well, Aid, you've got a big garage not far from here. Dom, you want to get out of your kitchen. Why don't you come together and make beer?" And we kind of did. We thought actually we got on. That was a really good idea. We both enjoy beer. And we decided to kind of take it to the next level. And we bought a 50-litre Braumeister and a fermenter and started kind of developing the recipes that I started in the kitchen. it was going okay. So we applied for a HMRC license and got kind of properly licensed and above board with the garage brewery and started supplying some local pubs. One of them was Pie on Rose Lane in South Liverpool. Sadly, that's gone now, but it's been replaced by a wonderful place called Hall. And the little grapes in town, which is just synonymous with good beer, good cask. Now it's got good craft. It's a real great place. So we were basically making the beer, selling it to them, getting feedback from people, and then that enabled us then to move on to the next step, which was to kind of fundraise to set up Carnival proper. We had a few missteps along the way. We were going to start in South Liverpool as kind of a social collective. That didn't really work out. By that point, we'd bought the brew kit. We thought, it was a done deal. That fell through. So then we started looking out on our own and found the place we're at now, which is on the waterfront by Prince's Dock. It's like it started out as it still sort of is like a weird little inner city town centre industrial estate. Don't really see many of them. Brown industrial units. They sell kind of everything from it's electrical wholesalers to paint wholesaler, car hire companies, and then you've got like a company that lifts heavy objects, and then opposite you've got a brewery and a bar. And we've been there since we opened in December 2019.
So you've gone from that 50-litre kit in the kitchen. What size are you at now?
Well, 16 hectolitres. We can brew anything from between 1,000 to 2,000 litres in a single brew. What have we got? We've got 8 fermenters. We've got the brew house. We've got a canning machine. It's got out of hand a little bit.
This is what happens. This is what happens, isn't it?
We've got a team of 5 full time. Yeah, includes a brew team. We've got a bar manager. We've got sales. We've and Aid and I kind of direct operations.
It must be so satisfying to see a business that started literally on the kitchen table to where it is now.
Oh, it's phenomenal, yeah. And we still have to pinch ourselves that it's actually happened because we all love beer. It's a great thing to be able to make it. We brew what we want to brew, and we get to market it how we want to market it. And we've been able to build a brilliant team. There's such a lovely bunch, and to see everyone kind of so passionate about the business and about what we're trying to do.
Because you started off, like you said, as being a home brewer. How much input do you have into the brewing side of things now?
We've got a few things that kind of keep us on a straight line, if you like. One of the things is our core beer, which is Carmen, which is a 4% Mosaic Pale. It was always for us, Carmen, when we first came up with it, we thought, right, this is going to be the beer that kind of gets us in to customers, gets customers interested in the beer. And what we didn't realize at the time was how popular it was going to be. So, Carmen is always something that we have to brew. We're brewing it every week, kegging it, canning it every kind of few weeks. And it's going out into different places. But other than that, we're very keen to work with other breweries, to collaborate with bands, to kind of do things that we want to do. So if there's a beer style that particularly we want to make, someone might put it forward. The brewer might, our head brewer might say, I'd like, because Carmen was his thing, it's his recipe. And if someone kind of like Ed kind of goes, I think we should make this beer, we have a team meeting about it. We look at we talk to customers. We look at how viable it is commercially as a beer to make and sell. And then as long as it's not too prohibitively expensive, then we'll go ahead and make it. I guess we're fairly democratic in that respect. Abe will kind of say, what about this? What about this style of beer or that style of beer? We might go back into the archives from when we're in the kitchen or the garage. We did that fairly recently. We made a beer for a guy called Lawrence, who's had a band called Go Kart Mozart, quite a popular indie band. Abe really loves his music. And what about this particular beer? It's a sour, it's got honeydew melon, it's got mint, it's got juniper berries. It's quite summery and light. And they had a track called Summer Smash. So we thought, perfect, let's suggest making this beer for them, work with the designer, and then we made it and released it. And it kind of sold out, I think, within 48 hours, I think, because of the nature of the collaboration. It's nice to be able to dictate what we want to make.
there's nobody telling you what you've got to do. You can literally do whatever you want. And as for listeners, for regular listeners who heard our previous episodes, we had a carnival beer as part of our drink along, and you were all over this, Dave. You loved it, didn't you?
I did, yeah, because it was a cherry Schwarzbier, which just jumped out when we were sort of offered which ones we could have via our sponsor Hall, and that was one that was like, right, I've not seen a Schwarzbier really being done in the UK. Cherry only sweetens the deal. Dave and I found yourselves in first lockdown, had the beers, and I remember we thought, oh, these are pretty nice. We never really sort of seemed to see Carnival filter down a little bit. Like Dave's West Midlands, I'm right down south in Suffolk. But now it's just sort of feels like perhaps you're expanding, taking that next step, and it's sort of getting a bit more. Is that sort of a conscious thing, or is that just naturally how it sort of happened?
No, it's absolutely conscious. Liverpool's been great for us because, coming out of not only just in lockdown, but also coming out of lockdown, the core of our business has been the hyper local community. There's been the pubs and the bars and the bottle shops that want to support local businesses like ours. But we also know as a business with with ever expanding costs and ambition to go quite far, that we needed actually to further our horizons. So the first point in that is obviously to kind of get the product out in far and wide. So we've now got some distribution partners on board who are taking the beer regularly, who are getting the beers out into much further afield now. So very much so, it's always been on our radar to get the beers out as far and wide as possible, and eventually to export. But it's a tough market to crack.
We didn't know that you had those intentions to expand, but we've noticed it. So the plan's clearly working. But
yeah,
on a similar sort of question, has your brewer changed at any point over the time, or has it always been the same brewing team?
Always been the same brewing team.
Because your beers recently, to me, seem to have stepped up. I've just opened your passion fruit sour here, and it's great. It really is.
Yeah.
That is a sour. That's not a sour that's a little bit sweet. That is sour.
Which is something you've been.
And this really bugs me because a lot of sours, they're not sour, but this is. It's really good.
If you're gonna make a sour, it's got to be sour. But I think it helps having the passion fruit in there, because passion fruit is quite a sour.
Yeah, it works really well.
But the base beer, the base beer is very sour. We get it right down to like 3.1 pH. Something you weren't able to try because you sold out a while ago. We're going to remake it again. Is Pracatam, which is our lime margarita goza, and that is it's lip puckering.
That's what we want. We want more of that.
If you're into that kind of thing, it wouldn't.
Dave is.
Yeah, bring it on.
It wouldn't go amiss with a nice shot of tequila and some agave syrup as well.
Nice.
The brew team it comes down to a number of things, but confidence, being able to just push their skills further and further and further. We've got a new, we had a new kind of chilling system put in, and we've got better fermenters now as well. So all the kit, I think, helps improve things as well. But they've really stepped up to it in terms of kind of the beer they're making, the techniques they're using.
It does definitely show because it's such a crowded and competitive market now. It almost feels a bit, if you don't get that first couple right, it's very easy to be overlooked. And I feel like there's breweries out there, and I know I'd be guilty of it, where I'd try a couple and be like, that's all right, it wasn't bad, it's not going to live in my memory, and I won't go back. And then maybe a year later or something, someone's going, oh, have you tried, or have you? And I'll be like, yeah, I had the majors go, they're all right. But breweries evolve, and I think that's something that perhaps gets lost a little bit, that just because it was okay then, there's no reason why it can't, like anything, any job or any craft, and you can get better, can't you?
Every brewery wants to improve and make better beer, ultimately. That's why they're doing it.
Funnily enough, it's another Liverpool brewery, when I've been thinking of this, that I need to go back and do, which is Black Lodge. Because I did a load of their stuff, and I was like, it's okay. There was a couple in there I thought were a bit better, and then there was a lot which I thought just wasn't bad, but wasn't. And then I've noticed they're just starting to sneak out a little bit now. I'm seeing that a little bit, and I'm like, well, maybe that's probably worth going back and seeing what they're doing.
I absolutely revisit Black Lodge. Great bunch of guys there, and they don't shy away from different styles either. They really like to push the boundaries out a little bit. And also, the Black Lodge team, they've been around. They've changed the brewery location a couple of years ago. They were the kind of I guess in the city centre, they were kind of the original. They were there first with their little brewery tap in the Baltic Triangle, where they still are, but in a new place now. So it's definitely worth a revisit, I think.
Oh, I will do. But obviously, we are here to talk about carnival beers. You're enjoying the sour, Dave. I've gone for the Strawberry Guy, which is a pale, and we have had recent experience of Belma, which is supposed to taste like strawberry, isn't it? So I'm guessing, is that the sort of influence for the name?
The Strawberry Guy he's a local music artist. So he used to be in a band called the Orioles. For a few years now, he's been doing his solo thing. He's kind of very well loved around Liverpool. Great guy. And his record label, he basically said to his record label, I'd really like to make a beer to launch my new album. So Melodic is his record label based in Manchester, got in contact with him and said, look, Alex would like to make a beer to launch his new album. What do you think? And we were like, yeah, we like Alex. He's a good guy. We love collaborating. We didn't want to put strawberries in. We wanted to make a pale ale. Because we like it as a style, and so we chose Belma, Old Eldorado, Mosaic.
We tried a beer with Belma not long ago, and we couldn't get any strawberry. So really interesting to see, Dave, if you can get any now.
I can. It's not even hard. It's there on the nose, definitely.
Yeah.
It's there to start with in the taste, and then this is actually, I find, quite dry.
Yeah, it is a little dry. Yeah. Well, it finished. I'd say gravity-wise, it finished kind of where we wanted it to, and then it kind of has this little at the end, this little dryness.
Yeah, definitely.
I had a half of it in on cask at the Grapes at the weekend, and it's one of those things. It's like it's almost like a different beer on cask. It's funny. It still has the same characteristics, but the dryness is kind of replaced by a bit more sweetness. In the beer and a bit more body. But yeah, we were really happy turned out, and Alex was great. He came to the brewing day and he came to the canning day. He loaded the canning machine for us, and
excellent.
His album was released last week. He's got some live gigs, and then his physical, the vinyl album gets released in, I think it's March. So I think we're going to rebrew it again for that.
Oh, nice.
And we're going to have a little in the tap room as well. We're having a listening party, so he's gonna play the record, he's gonna kind of DJ, and a little kind of bit of audience kind of participation as well around it as well. And I guess that's one of the reasons why we wanted the tap room, so we could do these kind of things, do our own events. Again, it's about writing our own agenda for things. And
do you find the tap room is an increasingly major part of the business?
Yeah, I'd say it is. I'd say probably sits around about kind of 20 to 30%. It varies. Okay. Depending, we've got a late license, so we kind of have different things on. We have it as a normal tap room. Usually, like on Friday night, we opened as normal, 4:00, and in town, in the Invincible Wind Factory, which is a gig venue just around the corner, Jarvis Cocker was playing.
Didn't manage to get him in, did you?
We didn't get him in, unfortunately.
Oh, that would have been a result. We
marketed it to, promoted it to the gig goers as the after party, the promoter. Nice. And so, people were like, right, gigs over at 10, where should we go for a drink? Town's a bit intense. Yeah, so people came, it's only a 5-minute, 10-minute walk. So it's really good to have that kind of that connection between the music with our neighbours and getting punters through the door as well.
This seems to be the real strand that's running through this interview. And I think of all the people we've had on, I don't think we've ever had a brewery which are so closely linked into the music side of things as well, and are reaching out and doing collaborations on that. I know other breweries have done the odd thing, but it seems a real concerted effort, and it's an admirable USP, I think.
And what is really interesting is that if you've got to pick a city that people would associate with music, obviously got Manchester, but Liverpool would obviously be a huge one as well.
Absolutely. For us to offer our venue as an alternative live music, but independent live music venue, where you could also get good beer and feel safe, was really important.
I love it. I need to be there now. Sounds good, doesn't it, Dave?
It does, yeah.
So, right, Dominic, where can people get hold of your beers? What's the best place to head to if they want to try a quite wide selection of beers? There's all sorts of styles.
Well, you could start off by kind of visiting the website, which is carnivalbrewing.me. We've got a web shop there. You can buy brewery tours. You can read a bit about us. You can also get our beers. Various places sell it at different points. So we've got a fair amount kind of in the kind of Midlands, West Midlands. getting out to London. So just have a look around, look at your local bar and bottle shop, and if they don't sell it, ask them why they don't sell it.
Yeah, if they don't sell it, get them to sell it.
We've got some really good distributors who are helping us get the beer out, so they'll be more than willing to supply.
Based on what we've drunk tonight, me and you, Dave, and what we've had recently from Carnival, you can't go wrong with putting an order in with them.
No, absolutely. Christmas is coming. I'd say with the packs you've got on the site, and you do cater at different price points, you can get a 6, you can get a 12, you can get a lot of different styles encompassed in all that. I'd say, why not? Either get it for yourself or get it for someone else and have a try of it over Christmas, because you really can't go wrong.
Daftaboutcraft.
Right, this is the time of the podcast that we really, really enjoy. We enjoy all of it, of course, but particularly this bit. This is the Daftaboutcraft drink along. Hopefully you've got 3 cans in front of you from our sponsor, Hall Beer in Stourbridge, and hopefully you're ready to crack them open and drink them with us, and hear what we think of them, and share your comments on social media. Let us know whether you like them or not. And we've got 3 very neat looking cans, Dave, here, haven't we, this time? I love the look of these.
I imagine it's appealing to your everything in its place and in its place everything, because
Oh yeah,
for the first time we actually have 3 beers from the same brewery, Unbarred, who have released a series of single hop and single fruit beers, and they've done 3 different styles with them, and it just felt rude really not to do this as a drink along. It sort of fell into our laps, and
It did.
seemed rather obvious.
well, this section always has 3 beers, and here's a brewery we quite like with 3 beers, so yeah, we'll take all 3, please. So we've got a Citra and Passion Fruit Sour IPA, a Talus and Grapefruit West Coast IPA, and a Bramlin Cross and Blackcurrant Saison, so 3 really different styles. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to them. I don't know what order to do them in, Dave. They're all 7-point-something%, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not actually that easy to go for. If we go through this drink along at our normal speed, the last one might be quite interesting.
We've not really discussed what order to do these. I think the last one should probably be the Saison.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I'm thinking we go with the West Coast to start as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, the Sour IPA might lead into the Saison quite nicely. Yeah, that's a good point. Feel free to open these cans in any order you want. You don't have to do them the same that we are. But yes, let's go for it. So, lovely artwork on these cans. They all marry up so well together. So this is the Talus and Grapefruit West Coast IPA. It is 7.3%. Like I say, hope you got it in front of you from hall-beer.com, which is where we get ours from, and they sponsor the podcast, and they're wonderful at providing these beers for us every time. I was in there recently and I saw one of our regular listeners, Tommy, buying them, so I hope you're getting stuck into these now as you're listening. He was saying that he mainly listens to the podcast when he's out walking, so I've sort of got visions of him walking through the woods with a few cans of Unbarred. We're going to get some funny looks if he is.
I think a lot of people do that. Not the drinking in woods part, but certainly the listening while walking. I mean, it's how I consume, I would say, 90% of my podcasts. So perhaps we need to get like those Daftaboutcraft hats. We could get one made. You know, where you get the drinks on either side, and you have the straws running in.
Oh yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. Yeah, I have to speak to our marketing department about that. Just had a quick sip of this. It's nice, isn't it? That's really lovely. That grapefruit comes across, but it's not, sort of grapefruit can be quite sort of bitter sometimes, but I don't get that.
Yeah, it's quite a soft finish, isn't it? But the grapefruit really runs through it quite heavily.
It does.
Yeah, that is nice. That is nice. It is a West Coast, definitely, but it's definitely more my kind of West Coast.
Yeah.
In that it's not too piney and things like that. I can do that on occasion. I wasn't really in the mood for that right now, so I'm quite pleased that wasn't really sort of resiny and all that. I wasn't really feeling that as a drink tonight. But some
of those West Coasts can be a bit like walking through a pine forest, can't they? Typical West Coast to look at. You can pretty much see through it. So what should Talus be offering us? Because what is really interesting about this, having singled hop drinks here, is that it gives a chance for that individual hops to shine. So we talk about this quite a lot, and you can have a beer and maybe it's got 3 or 4 hops in, and a lot of people can think, oh, which one am I tasting here? What's this? So this is a chance for Unbarred to really showcase the attributes of each individual hop here.
So this comes from your Kima Chief's website. What you should be getting for Talus. Big aromas of pink grapefruit.
Yep. Helped
citrus rinds.
Yeah.
Dried roses.
Yeah, maybe not so much of that, but maybe.
Pine resin.
Yeah.
Tropical fruits.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, sage.
Which of those do you get?
I don't get actually the fruit on the nose.
Do you not?
I would say I get
I get fruit salad.
I'm always. Do you? I'm always
salad.
a bit wary of these when we do it, and then I've been told what I should smell because I can now sort of weirdly smell a sort of rose thing. Not like rose water or those rose flavoured sweets that your gran used to have, which are horrible.
Our little dog went to the groomers today, and she before she left, they sprayed her with this little perfume, which is a bit like roses, but this beer doesn't smell anything like the dog does. No, I get a sort of fruit salad on the nose. It's very pleasant. I mean, you're not a West Coast fan, but this not being a straight West Coast is probably helping you a lot here, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I'm interested because I'm sort of thinking I'm going to have about a third to half of each, and then I'll sort of see which one I'm going back to. And I've had my half of that, and I like it, and I could certainly go back to it. I wouldn't be blown away. That's only because of the style, not because of how it's brewed. If you like the style, you'll love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it is really well done. It's just not quite
your bag.
And interestingly, nor's the next one. Although the last sour IPA I raved about, didn't I? I'll be interested to see if this cuts the mustard as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm quite interested in. I'm interested to see how this sour IPA matches up to that brilliant one we had from the Wizards at Vault City. But I used to really dislike West Coast not that long ago. On the 0 to 100 scale of liking West Coast, I think I'd probably be about 60 now. I think this could help you cross the threshold into liking this style. It's good. I like that a lot.
I think it's just it's just personal taste as much as anything. I'm with you in that I think we're both a little bit weary of juice and just a hazy pale because a hazy pale is a hazy pale is a hazy pale now.
And what's lovely about this set of beers is that there is no hazy pale, is there?
No, exactly. And I think you're going, from what I've seen, you're starting to start to get a bit more into West Coast and things like that, just to freshen it up. And I'm going a bit weird, and I've sort of gone down into Rausch beers and Schwarz beers, and I've gone back to my roots in terms of how I got into beer a bit. So
yeah, it's like you're drinking beers that taste like the season, autumn beers, smoky and woody and all that.
Yeah.
Right, I've just poured a bit of this next one out, and I think you have as well.
Smells nice.
Doesn't it?
Smells very sweet. Doesn't smell sour in the slightest.
I didn't expect it to smell very sour, actually. I know it is a sour IPA, but if you remember going back to that Vault City one, it was very soft and mellow and gentle, fruity. So this is Citra. If you drink craft beer, you've drunk plenty of Citra, because that's what you find in most pales, isn't it, and IPAs. But this has got the passion fruit as well. So Citra passion fruit sour at 7%. Just had your first mouthful. What do you think of that? I
like it. You're going to go mental in a minute.
That is amazing. That's brilliant.
I thought you'd like that.
That's like the
Good,
most,
isn't it?
That is perfectly well balanced. That is. So you've got this lovely fruity hit. And at the end, you've got a little bit of sourness, not loads, just a bit, and it just sort of fizzes away gently on the back of your tongue. That's lovely.
And you get the passion fruit, don't you?
Yeah.
Without it being too sweet. It's very well done, actually.
Massive Vault City fans here, and we raved about the Vault City Sour IPA. For me, that is bang up there with that Vault City.
You'd be able to pick them apart.
Oh,
I think I could.
Yeah.
I could pick them apart quite easily, because I can still remember how that Vault City and Alpha Delta one tasted, which is testament to how good it is. But I think I'll be able to remember this one in a few months' time as well.
Yeah, not over sweet, not over sour. Just oh man, that's ace.
And it is just worth saying, because we've touched upon this with the chats we've been having with people as well, and just as a wider thing, that if you've got a long enough memory and you've listened to enough episodes, we did a Hypertripe beer that was an unbarred beer, and we did not like it. But that's not to say we did. We said at the time we don't think they're bad as a brewery whatsoever. It's just this one didn't hit the mark. Could have easily been put off and not had any unbarred off the back of that for quite a while, and I haven't really seen anything that's taken my fancy of theirs until these came along. But it feels like the brewing's evolved a bit in terms of what they're doing.
I mean, this is like another level. It's like they've really switched it up on this. This is excellent.
I'm very excited about the saison now when we get to that.
Yeah. So what have you been doing over the last 3 weeks, Dave?
I haven't been up to an awful lot, really, in terms of anything too exciting on the beer front. We are hitting the time when my lovely wife will start collating my advent calendar.
I thought that, when people got married, all these sort of traditions, they just die out and you all give up and just sit around eating crisps all day and stuff.
No. It came up in conversation earlier today. She's batch buying rather than one massive hit. The first one I ever had from her was all one big hit from one place.
Right.
And then the next question was, where's good to get them from then? Like, who's got range and where's the value and things like that. So it's
I hear that hall-beer.com is pretty good, Katie. If you want to take a look. Yeah, we should tell people. So she basically handpicks you 25 different beers. When you open or you pull out the beer each day, do you drink it there and then? That day?
The first couple of years when I was a younger man, I did. And then I've noticed the last couple of years have started to stack up a bit, especially if it's like an 11% stout and it's a Tuesday and I've got work. It's a bit, might have to wait a few days for that one.
But the trouble is, presumably, because, your fridge and my fridge is always sort of pretty well stocked. So if you're not careful, all of a sudden, you've got another 25 beers going into the fridge. And it's a lot of beers, isn't it?
It is, although I have started to work this out now. So now that conversation has been had, I'll probably knock buying anything on the head for a couple of weeks because I'm obviously, like you say, I'm well stocked enough that I can easily last 2 weeks, and then that avoids me possibly doing a duplicate or something. So just going to draw up a list of places that she might not have think I've had stuff from before, which I think is where you're going to be enlisted as to whether I have or not. So.
I say anybody else who maybe is doing similar, you never know. Maybe there's people listening whose other halves do them a box for an Advent box. One of these unbarreds would go down very nicely in there, or even the whole set, to be honest.
Well, I was going to say the whole set, spread them out.
Yeah,
I think that would work a treat. I'm torn now because sort of the peek behind the curtain. We're doing a bit of more of a record tonight, so we've got these to drink and a couple more beers to drink as well. I'm a bit torn now because I was sort of thinking, I want to get through all of these, but I'd feel a bit bad getting rid of them now because the first two have been superb, haven't they?
I do want to drink all of this sour IPA. It is marvellous. And if you've never had a sour IPA, what better place to start than with this one?
Yeah, again, going back to what you were saying about how you're going down the West Coast a little bit more, I think I might have to start exploring these because that's 2 in a row that I've had and I've enjoyed them both a lot. So perhaps that might be the common ground we can finally find between your sour loving and my IPAs.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Ho! Just cracked the can of the saison and the colour is amazing.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my days. Look at that.
Go on, hold it up. Let's see. Oh, look at that.
That's amazing.
So, Bramling Cross.
Bramling Cross is really traditional hop.
That's lively. What an amazing colour, though.
It is amazing.
Oh, right, okay.
It can be used in rather unique aromatic qualities when added to the end of a boil, imparting lemon, blackcurrant, and hay. It's an aromatic type hop.
Just opened the can of the third one. Lovely sort of pinky stuff foamed out the top, and I'm going to pour it into the glass.
You won't be disappointed on the pour either.
Oh,
it is an incredibly vivid colour.
That is like Vimto, isn't it?
That's interesting you say that. I think it tastes like Vimto.
Ah, right, okay. Interesting. Let's give it a go. Do you know, don't think it tastes of that much.
Yeah, okay. I know what you mean.
Love the colour, love the look of it, love the fizz on the top of the pour. But to taste it, for me, there's not a huge amount going on there.
No, and I'm in the same boat as you. And I did a little bit of sort of looking into things while you were sort of getting to cracking your can there. And Bramling Cross wouldn't really be a hop. From what on some very rudimentary research, wouldn't really be a hop in the same sense of Citra and your Talus, which is going to impart loads and loads and loads. It seems that it's actually more on the aroma side of things.
Which fits in, actually, because I think the nose is more powerful than the actual taste of the Saison.
It's not a Saison for me.
No, if somebody sort of blind tested it and said, try this, you wouldn't say, oh yeah, there's a Saison, there's a traditional Saison, because that's not what it tastes like. But goodness me, it does not taste like 7.4% either.
And also, just what you were saying with that, we had a blackcurrant Saison on the last drink along. And if you really like that
We did,
from
yeah.
Duration, I think you'd be a bit surprised that would call itself exactly the same thing or pertain to be the same sort of beer, because they're really not. It's my least favourite of the three.
Yeah, but the first two set a very high benchmark because they were superb.
Indeed. So I don't mind it. I don't know that I'm a little bit disappointed because the Saison of the three was the one I had the biggest hopes for because I love Saisons. That's let it down slightly for me. However, it's offset by the fact that the West Coast and the Sour IPA are so good. The Sour IPA especially is so good. It's a really good trilogy.
It would have been really interesting to have done the Saison first and then graduated to the other two. And you'd be finishing on an absolute high, wouldn't you? I like it, and I would rate it favourably, but it doesn't have the same qualities that you would expect from your traditional Saison for me.
No. I think that's what lets it down for me. It's the colour and the nose are so good that got me really excited. And then it doesn't what you say is right. It doesn't really have a defining taste, does it? Pleasant. When in doubt, just go back to the Sour IPA because that's great.
Yeah.
But do let us know what you think of them as well. Perhaps you have this Saison and you think it's the best Saison you've ever had. In which case, please tell us why and what else you like and how you found the other unbarred beers, because we're always keen to find out what our listeners are thinking. So
absolutely, get yourself on Instagram, tell us what you think. Thanks to those of you who've been doing that over the last few weeks. I said this last time, but more and more people are doing the drink along, and I'll say it again, more and more people are doing the drink along. It seems that lots of people are getting involved. So if you keep your eyes on Instagram, next couple of weeks we'll be putting the next drink along beers up.
The final drink along beers of the year, no less, as well.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we're going to have to come up with something special, aren't we?
Yeah, maybe we'll go out of a bang and do like 4 or something.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a think about that. But if you watch our Instagram and Facebook pages, you will see in the next couple of weeks what they are. And you can get hold of them from hall-beer.com or go into the shop itself if you're in the West Midlands area. Go and see Hannah and Paul, they'll sort you out. Give them the code DAFTHALL, you can get 15% off, which is very generous of them, so make sure you use that. Then drink your next beers with us, Dave B and Dave D, here on Daftaboutcraft.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
When you hear that familiar music, you know it's time for Hype or Tripe. And it's a double whammy this time. Got not one beer, but 2 beers. And we're going to see if they live up to all the hype or whether they're just a load of old tripe. So what are they, Dave?
So, we've gone for Vocation, which is interesting because Vocation have been mentioned in dispatches before on the podcast and not always favourably. But what they have done is they have celebrated the Day of the Dead, which is a Mexican, I want to say national holiday, or certainly a festival or holiday within Mexico, which takes place within November. It takes place on All Saints and All Souls days. So they've done 2 beers, one called All Saints, one called All Souls. All Saints is an IPA. The Mexican nod here is it has been brewed using Neo-Mexicanus hops. So El Dorado, which we're familiar with, Zappa, which I'm not.
A lot of these hops do change their names quite often. I wonder if it's a different incarnation of a hop that we may know.
Sabro, and an experimental hop called HBC 472, so as yet unnamed hop. Insert hop name here. So that's the IPA, that weighs in at 6.5%. And then the other half of the combo is All Souls, which is a stout. Now, Vocation stouts do have a very big following. Lots of people love them. You do not. I don't have them very often, and when I have, I've been on your side of things that I find them a bit too artificial and a bit too sweet.
I've got to say, they're naughty but nice, which is £3 a can, is excellent. But when they start shoving stuff in barrels, I'm not happy with it. I don't like it. This hasn't been in barrels. It's not naughty and nice. Who knows whether it's going to be nice or really quite devious? I don't know. We'll find out. But I hope it's good. But I'm going in with an open mind.
Okay. Well, we'll get to the stout in due course. But as I mentioned now, in case we forget, the Mexican nod to this is notes of dark chocolate and mulatto and arbol chilies. It's basically a chocolate and chili stout, but with Mexican chilies.
But we're going to kick off with
All Saints.
Here we go. 6.5%. Hazy, fruity and juicy, apparently. Dave's already poured his out. Look, one step ahead of me. How is it? I'm going to guess. Hold on, before you say a word, I'm going to take a guess. There's 2 words coming out of his mouth, and they're going to be, it's all right.
I'm not convinced it's even all right.
Oh.
That's the worry. Now, it says you would expect notes of tropical fruits, coconut and tangerine. Now, I'll agree on that. I get some coconut and I do get some tangerine. Definitely
tangerine for me. Not a huge amount of coconut, but the tangerine is most definitely there. Loads of it.
But to taste, I'm not really getting it much of anything whatsoever. It's very bland.
Yeah, there's not a huge amount going on there, is there? There's nothing unpleasant about it. There's just not much going on.
You are correct. It is not unpleasant to drink in. It is not dishwater or anything, but it might not be dishwater, but it is dull as. If you've got all those hops in there, what's the sort of ratio? Because it doesn't feel like anything's playing off anything. Nothing's got sort of ramped up amounts. So it's, you're getting a big hit of, even if I got a big hit of Sabro, because that's taken over, at least it's something. This is just a bit.
I'll tell you what, actually, this is an interesting point to pick on. Sabro does often take over. It hasn't taken over. But
no.
I mean, it's been kindly dealt with because it hasn't taken over the whole beer. But I detect no Sabro personally. I think it's very sparing in there.
I think there's a little bit. So I would say it's either not taken over because there's just not the quantity available to do so. But given how nothing else is doing much, I don't think it'd need much to take over. That's very underwhelming for me.
If I was doing a blind taste test, somebody said, try this, what do you think it is? I think I would probably say it was a table beer.
Wow. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. And actually, it enforces what I'm thinking. I'd say session pale, because it goes to absolutely nothing at the end.
Yeah, there's not much
very
there,
watery. I don't really think we need to dwell too much on this one. I think it's going to be on All Souls. It's going to save the pair, because that's...
when we do hype or tripe, I want every beer to be hype. I had this conversation with somebody recently. It was Sam from Copper Beach. Not every beer can be hype, can it? You've got to have some average beers out there, and those average beers make the good ones even better. So maybe All Souls will be the saving grace here. Maybe there'll be a hype and a tripe.
I'm always a little bit happier to stick the boot in. And I don't mean it unfairly, because I know it's people's livelihoods, and I know that no one sets out to brew a bad beer intentionally. I completely understand that. But as you say, not every beer can be hype. And in a crowded market, this for me is just tripe, purely because the sort of selling point, the unique selling point is these sort of neo-Mexicana hops. I don't get any of them particularly. It doesn't hold together. I could go buy many, many, many other breweries' beers of a 6% pale and I'd get a better beer. So for me, unfortunately, it is just tripe.
But the marvellous thing about this episode is we've got a double header, so maybe Vocation can redeem themselves on the darker side of this duo. Let's pour it out and see. I get a lot of raisin, and I don't like raisins in my stout.
Do you not? See, I don't mind raisins.
I'm not sure, were we promised raisin? I don't think we were we?
No, we weren't.
Oh, it's definitely there.
When we said with the last one, we got tangerine in the can and then we lost it. Now I'm getting... I was briefly getting a bit of dark chocolate, but that's actually dissipated a bit as well. There's a little bit of smokiness, I'd say. A little hint of it, perhaps.
But again, I'm not sure we were promised that.
No, but I'm sort of thinking the sort of smoky thing you might get from a chili.
For the chili, okay.
I want that spicy, smoky chilliness.
Right, that's not bad.
Okay. No, it's not.
There is chocolate and raisin up front. Maybe more raisiny, more raisin vibes there than chocolate. But there's definitely chocolate there. I'm not necessarily getting the chili.
Are you not?
No.
Oh, no, I definitely am.
But which point is that kicking in for you then?
And in the back of my throat, I get some nice little...
That's what I would have thought, yeah.
Like, I can keep tasting it between sips. It's lingering, but it's never getting any hotter. It's just that nice little bit of warmth.
Isn't it interesting that you can both drink the same beer at the same time, purchased from the same batch, from the same place, and you get something different? I'm not getting the chili. Chocolate is, that's there. That's nice. It's a nice beer. That's a really good beer. That beer's got something about it, hasn't it? That the other one didn't have.
Yeah, that is a chocolate and chili stout. Can't knock them for that. I like that.
I've had 2 or 3 sips. Now I can feel some heat at the back of my throat. But it's quite subtle.
Interesting. And how spicy do you sort of like things, day to day in your food, or having a curry? Where are you on the spice scale?
I remember once going to Pizza Hut many years ago. Before
I wasn't where I thought you were going to go with that.
Before I got married, and I had a pizza called Etna. I mean, it's there, isn't it? You know what it's going to be like. It's going to be hot, but Christ alive, that was hot. So I don't think I've got a great capacity for spice and heat, to be honest.
So where are you on a curry house? Like if we're out for a curry,
I play it safe.
What are you having?
I'm playing it safe. I'm going to biryani. I'm playing it very safe. I don't like that heat. I don't need to be up all night holding my stomach. So actually, you would think, therefore, that somebody who doesn't like heat...
That's what I mean. I would have thought you'd find it quite potent. Because I don't mind heat. I can sort of go medium hot. And it's not off-putting.
I've had another sip. And for me, the more you go into this beer, the more the heat reveals itself.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not blowing your head off, but it's there. And it's getting warmer at the back of the throat. That's very nice. That's really quite clever, actually. I like that. That gets a tick. So we've got a tick. We've got a tick and a cross here, haven't we? Hype and a tripe.
I think, and I am very much surmising, that they had the idea of doing something to do with All Souls and All Saints and Day of the Dead, and maybe they just wanted to do the stout because that IPA just feels like an afterthought. A bit like when we had the Vault City pair, and they had the idea with the stout. It was the stout, wasn't it? And the stout off the recipe was decent. And then they'd made it into
a sour.
And that wasn't really much of anything.
Yeah, we weren't on board with that one. This is very similar, isn't it, actually, again?
Yeah, the IPA, no, I can take, well, not even take or leave it. I can just leave it. I'm not going back to that. I'm not interested. But the stout is nice. I've got no issues with the stout. That's a solid 4.
Yeah, that heat is building and building and building. It's a lovely, slow burning heat, if you want. It sort of it creeps up on you. For me, you got it slightly differently, but we've both got it in the end. That's a good beer. I like that.
Yeah.
So hit and a miss, a hype and a tripe on Hype or Tripe.
Daftaboutcraft.
Daftaboutcraft.
You've been listening to Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast, sponsored by Hall Beer Shop in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. Check them out at hall-beer.com.